Well, funny enough, it's probably better than ever before. We have an extremely strong trade and investment relationship between the US and the UK, reflected in hundreds of billions of dollars in trade and almost over $1 trillion of investment between those two countries. And looking at the figures over the first quarter this year, this continues to go up. So actually, it's really good.
The Prime Minister has, I think, in recent weeks commented on the tariffs that the President has imposed, not least the steel tariffs, which will have some impact on the UK at this point. She has not shrunk away from expressing concerns about some of these policies that the President has implemented. Is there any risk that this will poison the water in any sense between these two leaders?
Yes and no. On the one hand, the UK government has been fairly clear, and the business community has been supportive of that statement, that it doesn't think that the approach taken by the US administration when it comes to trade, and in this case tariffs, is the right one. I don't think, however, it will have a negative impact right now on the quite promising discussion that we see between the US and the UK on trade and investment.
Emmanuel, it's hard to see the US President keeping up to speed on Brexit with every little fine detail, and the early press report suggested that he might honour the special relationship by bringing a fairly significant gift, and that is, some strong comments around a free trade agreement with the UK on this trip. But if you consider where we got to with this so-called soft Brexit plan, which will keep the UK closely aligned to European rules, and effectively the UK gathering tariffs for the Europeans to hand back, how on earth does an FTA work between the UK and US down the track if this type of soft Brexit plan that was developed at Chequers actually moves forward?
I think it's not only the President, everybody has a hard time to keep track on events that we see on a number of fronts right now. But when it comes to a trade agreement, it's very hard for the President to bring that gift because trade agreements are negotiated underneath by a lot of very qualified civil servants who sit together and really work through the details as to what's possible and what's not. And that's also what's happening right now. And the US and the UK are in an extremely special place right now, similar to the special relationship and a special place, because they don't know yet what the starting place for the UK will be. So that may mean that they have to be very flexible, and they just have to do a lot of groundwork to prepare for whatever comes in a few months down the line.
I like the comments that it's behind the scenes, that it's these officials that have to work it out, but we all know the President can go off script. And if he wants to deliver a message, and if he wants that firm handshake moment, and we have this cosy special relationship, he may just do that and talk about pushing forward aggressively with some form of an agreement. If he does that, surely the officials behind the scenes need to come to the party and come up with terms that would be agreeable.
Well, it will have to go through the Parliament on both sides, so members of Congress and members of Parliament in the UK have to agree on it. But of course, political momentum helps, and we have seen the momentum that really picked up after the Prime Minister went to see the President right after his inauguration in January last year.
But although we talk of a special relationship, there's going to be no free ride. I mean, the Americans are not going to say, well, because you're Britain, you're going to have an easier tariff regime. They're going to negotiate just as toughly as they would with any other trading partner.
I think that is very likely. But I would say that as a German-born, having lived in the UK for a long time and have a very close relationship to the US myself, I can see that there is a special relationship between two countries, and this is also reflected in the way people in both parliaments think.
The issue really, it seems to me, from an American perspective, if you want to do business in Europe, do you still locate your headquarters in London, or do you put it in Frankfurt or Paris?
A very important question, and I have to say, as for background, that the US business community has been hopeful that the UK remains as closely aligned with the EU as possible and continues to do so. Now, we know where the reality is, and we will see how to make it work, and we will have to see what the outcome is in March 2019. I think on the positive side, we haven't seen much of a decline when it comes to investment from the US, but of course there is a concern underneath as to what will be the UK's ties with the EU be like in March 2019 and going forward, and then we'll have to see what the impact will be, let's say, over 5 or 10 years.
So that brings us back to the Brexit document ultimately, and why there isn't really any clear sense from that document as to what access services companies will continue to enjoy in Europe. I mean, would you see that as being a critical part of deciding what the relationship with America will look like going forward, because without full access for services, legal, financial, and so on and so forth, the UK will be at some disadvantage, won't it?
Well, in a way, yes, but at the same time, the political objective here was to have sovereignty over regulations in that part in that industry. So, which is why the Prime Minister has pushed forward to exclude it from that final agreement. Now, at the same time, we have only seen a one-pager last Friday, and we hopefully see a much more comprehensive paper later today, which will provide us a little bit more details as to what it is that the UK government wants to put on the table going forward with the EU.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.